Hello, I'm John Adams, editor of Digital Photo, and welcome to this video lesson where we're going to look at how we can make a still life image from one single subject. This is our starting point, a pair of child's scissors, and using layers, layer styles, and a bunch of Photoshop special effects, we're going to turn it into a classy still life image, something like that. Now, how are we going to do this? Well, we're first of all going to create a digital background. This is all created in Photoshop, this texture background here. And then we're going to start adding more scissors. Now we've colorized them a nice blue so they work with the background. We add them to the background until we've got a nice array of scissors. They're all different sizes thanks to the use of the transform command. And once we've got what we want, we're then going to blur them to give a nice pronounced depth of field effect. Now this kind of multi-layered still life project is not only a great way of creating images, it's also a great Photoshop exercise that will teach you loads of new skills. So let's get started. We'll close this one down, and then we're going to open up the scissors cutout.psd file. So we go to File Open, and we find the scissors cutout, and it'll pop up on screen. Now we've already done the hard work for you on this particular shot because we've already done the cutout. So you'll see it there floating on a transparent background. This makes the file a bit bigger than it would be if it was a JPEG, but it means we can get on with the fun side of this project rather than clicking the polygonal lasso all the way around the edge of the item concerned. So now we've got that ready, what we're going to do is just minimize it, and then we're going to create a new file. So go to File, New, and we need an A4 size document. Now you'll find A4 underneath the presets. If you go to International Paper, you'll find A4 in the size list here. There it is, A4. And this will give you a portrait format A4 sheet, 300 pixels per inch, white as the background contents, and 210 by 297. You can either accept that and click OK as it is, or you can actually swap those round, because we of course want our A4 round the other way. We want it landscape format. So we'll go for 297 in the width, and we'll go for 210 in height. Then click OK, and there's our A4 canvas. That's our virtual sheet of A4 paper. What we're going to do now is go up to Edit and choose Fill. And then in the contents box here, under Use, we're going to have 50% grey. It could be on any of these to start with, but choose 50% grey. Make sure the blending is normal and opacity is 100%, and then just click OK. And the whole canvas will be flooded with medium grey. And once we've done that, what we're going to do is run up to Filter and choose Render, and then we're going to go for Fibers. Click on that. You get this interesting pattern appears. Now what we want is about 10 in variance, so key in 10 there, and about the same in strength, about 10 in variance and 10 in strength. Once you've done that, just click randomize a few times until you get an effect you like the look of. That looks okay to me. That looks fine. So click OK once you see an effect you like, and you'll get your whole A4 canvas covered in this nice sort of brushed metal look. Now the reason we had to fill it with medium grey first before we could run the fibers filter is because the fibers filter needs something to work on. If you have a blank image or a fully white canvas, nothing's going to happen. So you need to get some grey in there for the fibers to actually be generated. Once you've done that, we're going to add some colour to this. So to add colour, it's really simple to do. Just hold down the Control key and hit U on the keyboard, and you open up the Hue Saturation palette. Now in this, just pop down to where it says Colorize, click that box, and then into Hue, put around about 240. These are the figures we've used. You can use anything you like really, it's just mixing up a nice coloured effect. So about 240 in Hue we've gone for, and a saturation, something like 20 should be absolutely fine. That's what we've gone for that kind of rich blue colour, but of course, fill your boots, pick whatever you want. Click OK once you've done that, and we have a nicely colorized brush metal look. We're not going to do anything more to this now because any more work we do on the background, it makes much more sense to do that work once we've got our scissors in front of it. So we opened up our scissors before. Let's get hold of those. There they are. And to get your scissors into the background, make sure you've got both visible on screen. You just need to see both windows somehow. If you can't do that, go up to Window, Arrange, and choose Cascade, and that will make sure you can see both images on screen at the same time. And once you have them both, click on the Move tool. There it is, just hiding in the corner. Click on the Move tool, click in the scissors window, and just drag it into the new background. Release the mouse once you've dragged it in, and there are your scissors. And you can move them around to your heart's content using the Move tool. So now we've done that, we don't need this scissors image on screen anymore. That's using up our system's memory, so we can just close that down because we're done with it. We have our scissors, and they're safe. Now, so we can see what's going on, we're going to have a look at our layers palette. So pop up to Window and choose Layers, and the Layers palette will pop up on screen. There are our scissors layer 1 floating above our background, which is simply called Background. What we want to do is add a drop shadow to our scissors. And there are various ways of getting to this, but the easiest way is really to go to Layer, choose Layer Style, and then choose Drop Shadow. Click on that, and the Layer Style box will open up with the drop shadow already selected. Now it's quite a big palette, so we'll just move it a little bit out the way so we can see the shadow we're creating. Blend mode, we need multiplying there, and opacity, we're going to set that to about 60. So just move the slider down to around 60%. There we go. For the angle, that's the global angle, which should be fine. Make sure you've got Use Global Light on, and that angle will apply to everything. 120 degrees is fine for what we're doing. And then for distance, spread, and size, we're going to go for 50, 30, and 50. So we can just key that in, just highlight the distance box and punch in 50. In spread, we go for 30. And in size, we're going to go for 50. There we go. And once you've done that, all you need to do then is click OK. There we go. And of course, if you can't see your drop shadow on the image there, just make sure it is actually switched on in the Layers palette. Just click on the eye icon, and there's our drop shadow. Now this is the one we're going to use on all our scissors layers, and that's why we've made it first before doing anything else. So now we've got our scissors and our drop shadow all sorted out. What we're going to do is copy our scissors. Now let me just make the Layers palette a bit bigger before we commence this. There we go, just make it a rather large there. Okay, what we need to do is select the Move tool, then all we have to do is make sure we click on the scissors themselves, hold down the Alt key, and you'll see the icon change to sort of two interlocking arrows. Once you see that change, just drag. And that's the fastest way you can make a copy of a layer in Photoshop. Really, really swift to do. We've made a direct copy of the scissors simply by holding down Alt and dragging with the Move key. Now we've done that, what we're going to do is change the color of these scissors. So let's just move the layers out the way a second. To change the color, again we use Control and U to open up the hue saturation palette, so let's just do that quickly. And what we're going to do is slide the hue slider to about 150, 155, something like that. That's good. That gives a nice cool blue color. So we go for 155 in hue and click OK. We have those nice blue scissors that contrast well with the red and also work nicely with the background we've created. Once we've done that, we're going to change the size of these scissors. To change the size, we need to use Transform mode. So hit Control and T on the keyboard, and you'll see this bounding box appear around the new scissors. All we're going to do is hold down the Shift key and drag one of these corner handles, and then we can scale down the scissors. Once you've done that, release the Shift key, and to rotate the scissors, just hold the mouse outside the bounding box and just drag it round. And that way you can actually rotate the scissors and position them however you want them to go. So we'll just move these into shape, maybe hold Shift and make them a little bit smaller. Something like that should be okay. Yep, we'll try that as our first position. Once you've got the position you want for your scissors, double click inside the transform bounding box and they'll be held in position. Now what we're going to do is make sure that these smaller scissors lie underneath our main scissors. And to do that, it's simply a question of going to the Layers palette and dragging the layer thumbnail down underneath. So just drag that underneath and the image itself, the object, will appear underneath the one you've dragged it underneath. The Layers palette, you're just looking at stuff from the top down. So there's our top layer, that's the thing you'll see first. There's the next layer, and there's the bottom layer. So that's the order they simply fall in. Now we've done that, we're going to make another copy of our scissors. Let's just move our Layers palette further out the way. What we're going to do is exactly the same thing. Make sure the Move tool is selected, hold down the Alt key, and this time we've got the blue layer selected, the blue scissors, and just drag them across. There we go. Once you've done that, Control and T to enter Transform mode. We're going to make them a little bit smaller, which is holding down Shift and pulling one of the corner handles. Something like that should do nicely. Then we'll rotate the scissors slightly. There we go. Double click to set that rotation and set that transformation in place. Same again. Hold down the Alt key and simply drag to move another pair of scissors in. Control and T, and we'll rotate these around. There we go. That should do the trick. And then we do the same again. And we keep on building up our layers in this way If we can actually move them into position, let me just move that layers palette. There we go, moving them into position like so. Bit of transform, just so we've got a nice pattern and a nice array of blue scissors in the image. Alt and move just to get those across there. Control and T for transform. And you can see once you get going, it's actually quite quick to do. It doesn't take too long at all. That's looking pretty good. We'll just play with the scale a little bit. Let's change the size of these just a touch. Shift and a corner handle to increase the size. Bit of rotation. We'll put this pair somewhere like there should be okay. That's pretty good. Yep, there we go. Something like that should do the trick. Double click the hand tool there, and there we have our scissors all lined up on our image. And if we look in our layers palette, you can see we've got quite a lot of layers going on. In fact, I'm just going to go to palette options. That's just clicking on this flyout arrow, selecting palette options, and we'll make our layers a bit smaller so we can see what's going on. There we go. We'll get more on the page that way. And there's all of our layers, all with a drop shadow with these various effects on here. I can actually make it a bit neater by just minimizing the effects layer. There we go. And now we can see what's going on a bit better. And if we want to change any of these particular layers, we can do. It's quite straightforward. We can simply switch them on and off to see what we've got. And if there's one you want to change the size of or change the position of, simply highlight that particular layer. Then we can hit Control and T to go into transform mode, and maybe just alter the size, the scale, or the rotation or the position of that particular item. Then double click to reset it. Okay, so we've got a lot of layers, lots going on, but what we need to do now is kind of change the red shadow. We've got the same drop shadow which we've copied across to each of the layers, and they look okay on the blue scissors, but we need the red scissors shadow to look different because it's closer to us, so we need the shadow to fall differently on the background and on the blue scissors. So to get at the red scissors shadow, that's not easy to say, to get at the red scissors shadow, what we need to do is expand our FX menu here and just double click on the drop shadow. That brings it up immediately, and what we need to do is just adjust the distance, spread and size sliders in the drop shadow just to make it give the effect we want it to give. So we're going to go for more distance, so let's just move that up. I think a little bit more than that. Probably about sort of 280, something like 280 should do fine there. Then in spread, we're going to reduce that a little, so we're going to take spread down to around about 20, I think. Yeah, that looks pretty good there. I'm just looking at the shadow here and the way it falls. Round about 20 in spread. And then for the size, we're going to make that a bit bigger. So let's just ramp up the size. That'll just blur the edges more, make it look like it's being cast by an item that's further away. Just moving about 170 or so. Yeah, that looks pretty good there. So once you've done that, we've got 280, 20 and 169, 170. Click OK to that. You can see our red scissors shadow is now looking much nicer in the way it falls across the background. Okay, and while we're talking of the background, that's what we're going to work on next. We said earlier we constructed the background, but there was no point doing any more work to it until we had our subjects floating above it. And of course, that's what we now have. So now's the time to do some work on that background to get it to work more effectively with our subjects. So we need to go right to the bottom of the layers palette and select our background layer. There it is. And what we're going to do is create an adjustment layer. Now this is the half black, half white circle in the layers palette. It's at the foot of the palette in Photoshop. It's actually at the top in Elements, but so it depends which version of the software you're using as to where it's located. But click on that, and from the list, just click Hue and Saturation. And that brings up our HueSat palette on screen. And what we're going to first do is boost the saturation. So we're going to crank this up to something like 50 to get those rich blues coming through. And once we've boosted the saturation, what we're then going to do is drop the lightness to get a much darker, much more somber background. And I think, yeah, that looks okay there. I've gone for sort of, somewhere in the mid-70s looks good on this particular image. But anywhere between sort of 60 and 90, depending on how your background has been generated. It'll vary with each image because, of course, we used randomize when we were creating the fibers texture backdrop. Okay, so once that's done, click OK, and there we have our nice dark HueSat layer. We're going to do a nice little trick now with this background layer, and that's using a layer mask. You see here in the hue saturation adjustment layer, we've got this white rectangle which is already selected. It's already sort of outlined in black. And to use this, all we have to do is pick up a brush. So we just get a brush. Make sure we've got a nice soft edge brush there. I mean, let's have a look. Something like a 300 pixel soft edge brush will be lovely to start with. There it is. We'll select that, and then we're going to make it really, really big. So just hold down the right square brackets key and keep on tapping that until you get to about 1700. You're just looking at the brush icon up here. So about 1700 pixels, a huge brush. And then what we're going to do is go up to the options bar, and where it says opacity, just reduce that slider till it's down to about sort of 25–30%, something like that. Once we've done that, we're then going to paint black into the center of the image. So make sure black is your foreground color. If it's not, hit D and then hit X on the keyboard. And then just a little swirl of black in the middle there. And you can see the black appearing as grey because we're only at 30% opacity, so we're actually painting grey. You can see that appearing in the layer mask in the hue saturation palette. A couple more clicks in the center, and you get this wonderful sort of spotlight effect just in the middle of the image there. And that's just where we're allowing the normal background. This one here is being allowed to show through that black hole we've painted in the layer mask. So the darkening we did with this hue saturation adjustment layer is actually happening in the white areas of the layer mask, and the original background is showing through the black area. So we're effectively painting a hole in the adjustment we've made. Now that's done and it's all looking good, what we want to do is actually create a nice depth of field effect, kind of a narrow depth of field effect, as though only the red scissors are in focus and everything else is falling away, as though we were using an aperture of sort of f4 or f2.8 or something around that area. And we're going to do this by merging all of this work with the background and the blue scissors into one layer and then running a Gaussian blur across the whole lot. So the first thing we need to do is click on this layer here. If we just collapse our effects now, our shadow effects, we're going to click on the layer immediately underneath the scissors, and then we're going to create a new layer above that. So if you click on that one, the one immediately underneath the red scissors, and then click the create a new layer icon, click on that once, we get a layer 2 just above the whole of these blue scissor layers. Now we've got this new layer 2 in position, what we're going to do is switch off layer 1, and that will switch off both the scissors and its drop shadow, and then we're going to hold down the Alt key and go up to Layer, and holding down the mouse, move all the way down to where it says Merge Visible. Release the mouse there, and then release the Alt key on the keyboard, and all the work you've done so far will be merged into one single layer. So if we switch off all of these layers now, it won't make a blind bit of difference. We've got all our information jam-packed together in the new layer 2. So we can switch our layer 1 back on again now, our red scissors, and there's our scissors and the shadow underneath them. And what this means is we can now run an effect on this layer 2, and that effect will apply to every single layer underneath it. And the effect we're going to run is Gaussian blur. So pop up to Filter, Blur, and then Gaussian blur. And the more extreme radius you set in the Gaussian blur dialog box, the more blurred the background will become, and it will give you more of that depth of field effect that we're after. So we're going to use roughly 20, so crank up the radius, and you can see the effect live on screen. As you move the radius to the right, you get more and more blur. Something around 20 looks okay. Yep, there we go. 20 looks great. Click OK to that, and look at that. We've got an instant depth of field effect. And if I just hit the Tab key to get rid of all the palettes, that's a handy tip. Hit the Tab key to toggle the palettes on and off. That gives you a chance to really look at your image, and I think that looks pretty good. We've got a nice blurry effect in the background. We've got our red scissors standing out really sharply with a nice shadow being cast. I think that works well. And that's how you can take one simple subject, like a pair of kids' scissors, and turn them into a dramatic still life composition. And if we have a quick recap of how we got there, this is it. All we did, we took our scissors to start with, and then we decided, let's create a background. So we made a nice sort of brush metal effect background, and then we added our scissors on top that were cut out from another shot. Following on from there, we copied our scissors into different layers after applying a drop shadow, and created this nice array of scissors all sitting above our brush metal backdrop, and then we amended the backdrop to suit the subject just by applying a hue saturation adjustment layer and then doing a spotlight effect on it by using the layer mask. Following that, we condensed all of our layers into one and then applied a Gaussian blur effect across all of those layers, so just our top layer of scissors stood out sharply. And there we have it. I think it looks pretty good, and that's one definitely that's going in the portfolio. Alright, hope you enjoyed that. Give that a whirl, try it with your own images, and please remember to send the results through to us at the magazine. Okay, cheers. See you next time.